Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on a great viewer question, and that is sort of to discuss and have a conversation that is centered around female psychopathic tells. In other words, what are some things that they do that would sort of give them away? How can you pick up and identify this? How can you acknowledge and validate this in your own experience and say, that's why I get it, that things are so off? That most of my other relationships are sort of this category or of this ilk or of this level. But yet there's this other person who is sort of separated from the crowd. They're a little bit different. They make you feel different. What is a psychopathic tell from a female psychopath? It's very difficult because it is almost like having everything screwed on, but then they're sort of like a wrench that just takes everything apart. And one of the main psychopathic tells, I would say, is keep this in the dark. Keep this secret. This is sort of over, above, and beyond, but hush, 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 shush, shush. This is just for your eyes only. It might only be for 30 seconds, 20 seconds. It might be for a morning, an afternoon, but you'll have this sort of very secretive aspect. Like, let's just keep it and don't tell anybody else, or don't you dare da 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 da. There can be, or keep this hidden within you. And what can be hidden within you is not only the love that you feel, but also I might even say hate or anger or repulsion or revenge, or these other brewing feelings that might begin to come about as a result of being sort of played with, toyed with from a female psychopath, that leaves people sort of undone and they don't know really how to put the pieces back together again. It sounds weird. It seems odd. Once again, like we always talk about here on the channel, this channel was developed for the resource, for the understanding that there is not a lot of areas that you can go to, places, communities, discussions, tools for healing. Getting this out in the open, out from the closet, out from under the rug, out from inside, right in here, and to sort of get it out and speak about it to others, because if you don't, it sort of begins to fester and get very worse and can lead to a lot of sort of paranoia and, the sort of isolation, post-traumatic stress syndromes, complex PTSD, all that you read about in Pete Walker's book, Complex PTSD, from surviving to thriving. So as you can imagine, that's a much different life, a whole different set of priorities, a whole different set of focus than sort of surviving. I mean, surviving is you're in a reactive state all the time. And it's very unhealthy to be constantly in a reactive state. You do not get a sense of yourself when you're in a reactive state. You're always reacting. You're always sort of, something else is causing your body to move, for you to think in a specific way, for you to feel a specific way. It's like you're always just sort of trying to hang on or cope or manage. And to a certain degree, there is this, of course, experience in much of life. We're talking about an undue, irrational, and very severe and intense amount of this on a chronic and ongoing basis, that especially when people are young, they might be able to weather it. If this has gone on, for your teenage years, your 20s, your 30s, you start getting into your 40s and you start going, we got to dial this different here. We got to redial this. We got to do a reset. If you're still playing this game with a female psychopath in your 50s and 60s and beyond, it gets pretty exhausting. It gets pretty disorienting. It feels like, everything is scattered and amok, and it can feel very directionless. People might say they feel lost or things of this nature. So I would say one of the main tells is this sort of ability for them to sort of get in and break you down. In other words, comments that leave you not feeling very good about yourself. This is, becomes an insidious and chronic and ongoing emotional abuse. When you are repeatedly just sort of making snide comments, to another that just sort of begin to really get in under their skin and begin to cause them to be reactive a lot, in order to please them, in order to get them to smile, to get them to say, I love you, to give you a kiss, to give you a hug. I mean, God forbid that they should show some form of emotion that isn't mimicked, because it is not possible. They do not have a real feeling sense. They don't have the warm bubblies, the warm and fuzzies. It's just not where they're at. So, if you have, someone who is then, trying to match up with this, you get a grating, you get a disconnect between the people, and it will create a sort of osmosis or exchange, if you will, of this emotional energy. And with that, it can bring out the best in you, i.e. it's coming from your strength, or it can begin to bring out the worst in you, i.e., what you don't need to be focusing on, something that has irrelevant oftentimes to your happiness or functionality begins to become blown up out of proportion. And then it is those people, the unknowingly accept that big sort of, falling into their trap, which is like an abyss where people aren't really able to sort of recover their sense of self, especially depending on specific areas of where you're at in your life, or whether this is a professional situation or a personal. And yes, I also just wanted to mention this in the beginning of the video. A lot of people do not know that I discuss these sorts of situations with people, and get things out on the table and help get things, sort of vented out, sorted out, and things of that nature. So just in case you were wondering, yes, I do. You can email me here at the About page or at the peaceandharmonynow@gmail.com if you are wanting someone to speak with about this. I just want to throw that out there because I think a lot of people did not know. So anyway, the issue then, though, with this becomes this sort of like, it's buried within you. It's kind of like the key gets buried within you. Don't tell anybody about this. This is too horrific to even discuss. I just don't know who to go to. Or so what would they think of me if I told people that this just happened? So there becomes a lot of this silent self-protection that goes into play as part of keeping the abuse in place. It becomes then, it really will take, the highly stimulating and exciting and positive and really turn it into really the negative. It has that power to flip-flop both ways. And the, purposely of omitting details, and I would say keeping people in a fearful state, a fearful for themselves, is the state with which they will manipulate people from. Fearful that you'll lose the job, fearful that you won't be attractive enough, fearful that they will take your boyfriends or girlfriends as a romantic partner, fearful that they will not be there for you, fearful, that you are letting too much slide. So, it becomes, there's sort of what I would always describe as like a big picture, and then there becomes this little something that is off about the picture. And rather than seeing the big picture, you have a tendency to focus on this little anomaly, which is really what the female psychopath is. It's like a big anomaly, if you will, because really they, what's different is they don't have a sort of warm feeling, what you would consider a nurturing sense. They might be very feminine, very seductive, very good looking, have their wiles, their wild oats, whatever it is you want to call, but we're talking about someone who really has a certain coldness underneath the rind, if you will. And the rind belays the fruit within. So just like you have a watermelon with a rind, you don't eat the rind. You don't just take a big bite into a watermelon. You're there to get what is underneath. So really, I think people misunderstand and see a real disconnect between what is outside and what is within, and then how you're feeling. And then you get the group think because other people don't sort of get what you're experiencing and they're not on the same wavelength. And it becomes very embarrassing then to say that, this and this boundary was violated, or this and this was said to me, this and this was what she did, or this is how they really felt like a punishment, very painful, and you didn't really get a chance, they got you where it hurts, like in the gut, under the knees, what have you, at the jugular, and it becomes almost like people might feel that their life chi is just sort of gone, like their happy self feels nowhere to be found. And I think a lot of it is because there is this repressive mechanism when you're with this type of relationship, which you don't see it coming, you don't understand while you're in the midst of it. But there is a tendency to keep something secret. Don't tell anybody. Have almost like not just being confidential, this is totally different. What I'm talking about is, when they're like, this is just between us, you don't have to meet my kids yet, or you don't have to cook for me, or we don't have to move in, or whatever, all these little things. Let's just keep it just like it is. I think would be probably a very common statement that is that people must hear, and it's sort of insinuated. I mean, I think that they're aware that their comments are off the cuff. Their comments are out of the ordinary. It's designed to people to go, what? And like take a step back, and then it's usually some sort of allure, generally in a sexual vein or a sexual innuendo or feeling, no matter what the relationship, even if that is appropriate or inappropriate. This is usually a power with, I guess you would call it a power or a vibe or a wavelength that they utilize, tap into, exploit, take advantage of. And, there's some places where this is just like where this is all that it's about. It's that sort of more lust atmosphere, or things of that nature. But that can taint, like I think a viewer said, who feels tainted, is because it gets to the point of toxicity and unwholesome, and it becomes the relationship it does not have the substance. It has only the rind, and you're like, I'm wondering why I'm emotionally starving, because you're just interacting with a rind. I mean, that's what there is no really real relationship. In fact, it just might feel very chemical or very intellectual or of the mind, meaning cerebral. Because the psychopath, they do have different brain structures. They do have different forms within their brain, which have been found to show reduced activity, reduced size, and then an elevated sensitivity to different neurochemicals, which create this drive, which creates this unnatural feeling of boredom. Like they have to always be going. They just aren't there to just chill and hang out with people and chew the grass or whatever it's called, shoot the breeze, chew on it, whatever, chew the cud. That's just a silly expression, but you're not going to get them. There's usually some form of manipulation that they are trying to control the outcome of others. In other words, it's as if I would say the people who they are trying to hook do feel hooked. They feel that they're connected to them in this sort of different tension way, if you will. They feel an energy of that. They don't feel free, liberated, okay to be themselves. I can just make a joke and they might laugh, they might not, big deal, but they just don't feel listened to because you are not listened to. What you say is not taken to heart because there is no heart. You're passing through an empty lane. It's just like an empty coffee can. There is no heart. It's a coffee can. It is empty, cold. It is like you might as well be making it out of hangers or some sort of metal form that has been soldered together because it is not of a warm and caring nature. It is not of that nature. Just like cement is of a different nature than grass, we're talking about a different nature of a person. Someone who does not have a human nature like the rest of society. I mean, this is what we are talking about. If you have experienced this, you kind of know what we're talking about. If you have not experienced this, then you do not know what we are talking about. And oftentimes that's the problem I think that a lot of people run into, is that they have a very difficult time comprehending it because they can't get themselves wrapped around it. They don't have the vocabulary, the banter or discussion back and forth. You know, oh my gosh, that is too much. Why didn't you tell anybody? Why did you let this happen? Why did you give, even when it was at this extent? You know, it's you lose perspective. It's like you have a pair of glasses on that has a Vaseline you cannot see. You're just sort of on an onward jet propulsion sort of momentum that keeps you driving from day to day, usually because these female psychopaths want to be what you think of in the morning and then what you think of in the evening. I mean, and during the day and all the time. And in other words, they get this control. It becomes a envy, a jealousy, not a real relationship. People then become jealous for their attention, I feel, when they feel that they're being played and maybe they might not be the main squeeze, you know. So this sort of, and then, you know, people then begin to shift and then lose, as a telltale sign, sort of their regular, I would say, grounding everyday activities. You might love to ride a bike, go golfing, go shopping, work out, groceries, cooking. I mean, have a fitness practice or a spiritual practice, or, you know, you might have another civil duty that you do or another hobby, you know, but then you'll find that it becomes embarrassing to do that because it seems meaningless. It doesn't have the same buzz, you know, energy. It doesn't have that whole caliber of excitement. It doesn't have that same tinge of altered reality. It doesn't feed the addiction that develops with these types of people. And then, you know, the purposely of omitting details. So not only do you get deprived of a healthy, open, honest communication, but it becomes fear-based and then omitting details so that you cannot put the gestalt together. And many other types of abuses then can take place with this. But namely, I would say it gets really severe. It gets very, very intensive when things begin to get bottled up. The telltale sign, once again, is often it's sort of insinuated that this is to be left over here, or something that was exchanged is not to be exchanged with others. So I think it's a tell for them because they're telling you that how they are is not like other people, and hush, hush, hush. I mean, I think it becomes sort of, I think that's just part of how they begin to set the trap in the beginning. Unfortunately, people then don't feel liberated and enhanced and growing and excited by the relationship. They feel just the opposite. They feel limited. They feel fearful. They develop a low self-esteem. They lose a lack of center from themselves, and really things become, you know, backwards and reverse and sideways. So the gears get all mixed up in the operating system, if you will. I mean, I use a lot of analogies here because it's something that I want you to be able to feel. When you're talking about dealing with these individuals, a large component, I would say, is the kinesthetic, the body experience. It's not just that you think, oh, wow, is that person good looking? There's a physical experience that the person experiences when they are around that is different from other people. It's usually more intense. So this is how it becomes this sort of pristine, I would say, pursuit maybe for a lot of men who feel like they are going for the ring, going for the gusto, going for the one, going for the trophy. You know, there's no one else like this. Who else would da-da-da-da-da? I mean, it's a similar story. I mean, that gets like repeated and repeated. But now with the information age, at least people can begin to connect. There is information. People can connect the dots. They go, OMG, this is what happened. And I knew something was happening, but I did not know, or I did not know. So it's like a discovery. It is a discovery. But those are some of the tells that you can see that will lead you down a wrong path, and perhaps where you don't feel happy, you don't feel empowered, and you're not sort of getting what you want. You don't have anything really to show for it. It just, there's a lot of confusion. There is a lot of dismay, a lot of bewilderment, and then people lose the faith. They lose trust in themselves. They lose trust in the process. It's just, it is part of what happens. It's just part of how things go during this cycle or dynamic of encounter. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out, peace in, and have a beautiful day.